Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back into the video from Annie News. I have fallen behind on the schedule. There's another good content video after this that he's already released, but it's fine. So I do believe this is for episode 5, where Rudeus has gone to the magical school of Hogwarts and has met Sylphie, known as Silent Fitz. No idea. And they have the little demonstration thing. I'm just going from the title of this, so maybe this is going to show how that was originally interpreted in that. I'm really enjoying this season. I really think it's great, and I can't remember if it's this episode or the next one. I think it's the next one. Reus' confusion with Fitz's smile, and he's like, "Whoa, wait a minute." But yeah, let's see what was like either left out or changed or blah, 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 in episode 5 of Mushoku Tensei season 2.
Mushoku Tensei does well to focus on Rudeus and the core aspects of his story, but more often than not, they leave out the more intricate details. Things like the university's inner workings, the adverse effects of Alina Lise's curse on her body, and
Yeah, like hardly anything's mentioned about the curse. Just because it seems to me it comes across as a joke. Do you know what I mean? Like as if like she has to bang these guys unless her curse, but then apparently it's a real thing. And yes, we don't really get much of the university either. All right.
even the split-second decision that saved Sylphie's life here. These aren't necessarily crucial things to the plot, but with a story as deep as this, it would be a shame not to know the fascinating subtleties that make every location and every character so damn interesting.
Yeah, like there seems to be such awesome world building here, and the anime does a good job. There's only so much you can put into an episode, really, isn't there? So, yeah.
So, just like how we do every week,
Hell
let's take a
yeah.
look at what the anime left out from the novels. Let's get started. Episode 29, Ranoa University of Magic, covering chapters 2 and 3 from Volume 8 of the light novel.
Okay.
As the largest country in the central continent's northern region, Ranoa was quite similar in terms of power to the Shirone Kingdom. What Ranoa had that Shirone didn't, though, was an alliance that made it part of the Magic Nations, a group with intimate ties to the Magicians Guild that worked together to advance the field of magic.
Cool.
This group was so invested in this very cause that they'd even gone so far as to create a city specifically to lead it, a place that, as we know, Rudy now finds himself in. So, right at the outer edge of Ranoa is a grand city containing not only the University of Magic, but also the Magicians Guild headquarters and even Neris's workshop for magical implements.
Cool. What's
They
cool?
were all shoved together into the magic city of Sharia.
I don't know if they've taken this art from the actual, but this art anyway just looks absolutely fantastic. I don't think it's from Mushoku Tensei, but loving the art.
Thriving hub for magic that effectively served as the center of the magic nations as a whole. Now, just as Rudy had mentioned, it was along this journey that Alina Lise's curse was brought up. The anime may have underplayed it a bit with those quotations.
Yeah, it's exactly it. I thought it was a joke. So, if this is the case, I totally get why she is the way she is. I mean, I get some people can be a bit, but, wanting it a little bit too much. But if she needs it, then alright, I get it.
But this is actually a legitimate curse that could potentially kill her. You see, back when they were traveling and going from city to city, the two had accidentally taken a wrong turn somewhere. So, rather than arrive at the city that they were supposed to, they had instead spent a week on the road trying to find their way back to it.
Oh.
A detour in which Alina Lise's health deteriorated rapidly. Her face turned pale and her body frail, and no amount of healing or detoxification magic could do anything about
Oh,
it.
God.
So, it was then that Alina Lise told Rudy that if she didn't periodically sleep with men, then eventually she would die. This wasn't something she was particularly upset about, since even if she wasn't cursed, she would still live the exact same way anyway.
Oh, okay, right.
It was just more of like this minor inconvenience for her.
Oh,
In any
right.
case,
Alright, never
Alina
mind.
Lise was here
It
to
kind of
find
takes it away a bit, but
younger
alright.
men. She would have to pay tuition unlike Rudy, but for someone like her, an expense like that was
Oh,
marginal.
she's actually paying
see-
to be there. Alright, okay, cool.
A lifetime of exploring labyrinths has made her quite rich. Like, rich.
Oh,
She usually
she's in
carries
the
5
money.
Asuran gold coins at any given time, as well as several
6
orb-shaped
now, okay.
crystals, each valued
There's 4
at 10
there.
gold coins.
It's
That
more
may
than
not
10.
sound like very much, but with the Asuran gold coin being the highest form of currency in the world,
She's
just
doing all
one
right.
was enough to let you live comfortably for months.
Right.
I mean, the entire 7-year tuition was only 3 gold coins. With that not even making a dent in her savings, Alina Lise was free to do pretty much anything.
She's gonna have a good
Now,
time.
an interesting thing to note about the university itself is that the entire thing was built out of magic-resistant bricks. Special constructs crafted right here in Ranoa, capable of repelling mana and withstanding even large-scale magical attacks. You didn't see them very often elsewhere, but with the Magician's Guild having a monopoly on their sale and production, it made sense that they'd be prevalent within the Magic Nations. The only place you'd ever see them outside was in the Asuran capital. No one knew how it was they were made, but if they were so commonly present throughout the Magic Nations, then Rudy imagined it couldn't be that expensive to make. It was likely the Magician's Guild was just selling them at a massive premium. Fast forward to Rudy's meeting with Vice Principal Genus, and there was a certain excitement that came when Rudy confirmed he was enrolling. Since most young, skilled adventurers tended to develop oversized egos, Genus was quite shocked when Rudy showed himself to be quite humble.
Ah.
What he expected was a prideful kid who thought themselves to be the best, but what he got instead was a modest student eager to learn. It was a display of respect that had Rudy
Unexpected.
contemplate his own run-ins with adventurers like that. The first was a 14-year-old B-ranked boy who considered him to be his rival, and the second was a 15-year-old B-ranked girl named Sarah. The former got themselves killed while doing an extermination quest, and the latter was just someone he preferred not to think about. When we get to Rudy's test next, the only thing not mentioned from the walk there was the fact that the teachers were only skilled up to the king rank.
Oh, right, okay, so there's Emperor and God. Cool. So we got Beginner, Intermediate, Advanced, Saint, and then King. So that's what they're ranked at. And then we got Emperor and God, right? So there's 2 more ranks higher.
If anyone wanted to learn from an emperor or higher, then unfortunately this university wouldn't be the place for them. That said, it'd be extremely tough to find teachers who were better, since the professors here were far more skilled than the ones even at Asuras Royal Academy. It was once Rudy had gotten to the gym that the vice principal would point out the mock battles being held by the 4th years here. You see, the only reason SYLPHIE was even here to begin with was because her class, mostly consisting of noble ancestry, was currently in the middle of battle simulations.
Right.
It turns out combat experience is a very core part of the curriculum here.
Oh, mate, Alicization was great. It started off a bit, but like the second half of Alicization was absolutely boss. But anyway.
Part of the reason they could do this without any issues is because the floor itself was engraved with numerous healing circles. Saint tier markings within an advanced tier barrier that not only withstood quite a bit of magic, but also healed anyone within almost immediately. It wasn't as strong as the king tier circle from Shirane, but since that one was also capable of blocking physical damage, it was a fundamentally different creation from this one.
Right.
So, while normally Rudy's test would have just been him showcasing voiceless magic in front of the professor, the professor who taught such a skill had unfortunately died, leaving Genus to make the quick decision to go and grab SYLPHIE. He knew SYLPHIE wouldn't be even close to Rudeus' skill, but at the very least he hoped she could assess his capabilities. Now,
Even then Rudy assumes, right.
something I'm sure many of you are probably wondering is how it is Rudy didn't recognize the wand he gave her.
Never thought about that. But, yeah, okay, please explain it.
Well, after 10 years of using Aqua Hartia, the only thing the wand reminded him of was the one he happened to use that looked just like it.
Yeah, okay.
An interesting thing to note about the fight itself is that, if not for a last split-second decision made by Rudy, there was a good chance he could have killed SYLPHIE right there and then.
Ooh, it did seem quite quick and bam, because I think he was a bit overconfident in Fitz's abilities here, yeah.
It was after he'd used his Disturb magic and prepped his stone cannon that the resulting projectile would be aimed directly at her face. That's right. A stone bullet capable of penetrating dragon scales was about to be launched at top speed straight to SYLPHIE's head.
Damn.
If not for Rudy changing his mind partway through, then the instant death caused by it would have been too much for any circle to heal. So, aside from the fact that Rudy almost killed her, the more astonishing thing was his application of Disturb magic. Yet again, Rudy had come across several mages unsure as to what it even was. In the past 2 years adventuring all the way back to his time in Season 1, there still wasn't a single person he'd seen use this magic except for Orsted.
Right.
In any case, Rudy beating Sylphie
And that was a big deal.
here was his ticket into the university, bringing us to 1 month later where he'd finally settled in as a full-fledged student. To add on to what it means to be a special student, so long as you weren't committing crimes, destroying the school, or talking bad about the Magician's Guild, the special students could do pretty much anything.
Okay.
Whether it be spending all day eating food in the cafeteria, or training non-stop in the practice buildings, the school and its facilities were his to explore. He could even go off campus and do some adventuring if he wanted to.
Oh.
When it came to the more promiscuous things, he was surprised to know that the school didn't care about that either. So long as the encounters were consensual, students could go and do whatever they wanted with each other.
Nice. Nice.
It was a rule or lack thereof that made Alina Lise's life a whole lot easier.
Hell yeah, she
To us,
loves it.
such a policy might be a little bit strange, but when you consider the wide range of ages and races constituting the student population, it was only natural the norms be a little bit different.
Okay,
So,
love
unlike
it.
how acts
Oh.
like that would negatively affect public morals in our world, here they were completely natural. The university clearly wanted to make this place as accommodating as possible. Whatever
That makes it sound funny. As accommodating as possible, so everyone can just fuck everyone.
they could do to stimulate the growth of their students, they were
Stimulate.
willing to do all for the sake of advancing magic.
Of course.
In fact, the university was so focused on doing exactly that it didn't matter who or what you were, so long as you had mana and could cast magic, you were eligible to enroll as a student here.
Go.
It was an open door policy that included even those with questionable backgrounds. This did
That was very weird with him with the statue. Oh.
invite a bit of opposition from Asura and Millis, but with one having invested copious amounts of money into the university's research and the other being on the complete opposite side of the world, neither were ready to start a war over it. That didn't stop Millis's temple knights from expressing their disdain, but that was really about all they could do. So, all in all, it was the world's greatest magic school led by the Wind King George. A massive institution housing well over 10,000 students. Where do these students stay, you might ask? Well, with an enormous
At the university, of course. No, go on. Go on.
5-story dorm located right on campus, most students doubled up to share a single room here. Special students got to live alone, but you could always pay to live in a bigger room typically intended for nobles.
Oh,
It was
sick.
the more secure option for those like Princess Ariel.
Of course she's going to.
Fast forward
Jesus.
to the opening ceremony, and this was where we should have gotten our introduction to the principal. The Wind King George, who was right in the middle of preaching his classic sermon about magic. If there was one thing he liked to talk about, it was the fact that magicians weren't inferior to swordsmen. Most of the world may very well think that way, but George was out here on a mission to prove otherwise. He didn't deny that the sword styles created by the sword gods were works of art on their own, but unlike magic, those were tools simply intended to kill. To him, magic had a future far greater than that of swordsmanship.
Right.
And that was the core principle he would always preach to the students. When Ariel had come to give her speech next, the charisma Rudy was referring to was the element of her speech that just made it pleasant to listen to. There was something about the way she spoke that just made him compelled to do what she was saying. Now, prior to Rudy's arrival at his class, Genus had first urged him to be careful when interacting with the other students. Apparently, each were a bit on the more eccentric side. So much so that a literal warning had to be placed outside for the normal students. Out of the 4 students he saw within, the one he recognized was also the one his eye of foresight showed running towards him like a snowplow. He didn't even bother to avoid the desks, but instead ran straight through them, launching them in
Flip them.
each and every direction.
Jesus.
Of course, Rudy had tried to stop his charge with a stone cannon strong enough to knock someone unconscious, but the moment his attack reached Xanaba's face, it simply exploded to zero effect whatsoever. It was a comedic scene that would have given us a good look into just how durable Xanaba is.
Oh.
We knew he was a blessed child back from Season 1,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the extent
yeah.
of his powers are still yet to be known.
Ah, so that would have been a little interesting gauge on that, but never mind.
I mean, even Xanaba himself can't control them properly. Normally that would cause him to be treated like a cursed child, but since the Magician's Guild liked to keep him around as a specimen for study, this third prince from the Shirane Kingdom was now a special student studying abroad.
Right. Yeah.
With regards to the 2 Doldia next, normally their piercing gazes would have made him quite uncomfortable, but after dealing with truly scary people such as Regerd, there was a certain lack of murderous intent that just made these 2 seem, well, docile. Xanaba did wonder why Rudy was being so passive with them, but after explaining how it was best to avoid unnecessary conflicts, Zanoba accepted it as another one of his master's wise teachings. That's not to say that Rudy would just allow bullying though, cause if he did ever see them do such a thing in the future, then Rudy resolved himself to step in no matter what. For him, bullying was an absolute no-no.
Well, yeah, of
Now,
course.
something they didn't include from Rudy's conversation with Cliff was an additional inquiry Rudy had about Eris. You see, after hearing that the two had spoken, Rudy was curious as to what Eris had said about him. When Cliff responded stating that she said he was small, Rudy's mind immediately went to down there. With one word, all his worst fears were all but confirmed. It made him think back at how Sarah's expression gave off that exact same vibe too.
Oh god, that's not really going to help the situation, is it? Jeez.
So, from one misunderstanding to yet another, Rudy was finally certain that it was in fact the sex that had driven Eris away. He would then mention how the two had parted ways and how he'd grown since then, but for Cliff he could only express just how unsuitable Rudy was for her. They were words that pierced his heart like daggers. Aside from that, we also learned that Rudy had essentially given up on the path of the sword, stating how his intermediate skills in the sword god style are pretty much the best he was capable of. Then the master Silent Zanoba was referring to was actually hinted at to not be Silent Fits like how some of you may have assumed. You see, not only was this mysterious person responsible for creating magical implements and adding items to the school's menu, but they were also the person who suggested uniforms be part of the school's curriculum.
Okay.
Then, the most important fact about her was that her enrollment came as a direct result of a recommendation from one of the 7 great powers.
So she's going to be, because like she's in the intro, isn't she? So it's like, right, okay, well, seen nothing yet, so alright, this is interesting.
So, considering that we've only met one of those, I'm sure you can imagine who it is that person recommended. It was during Rudy's encounter with Fitz after that the mention of the book by Animus would lead to a bit of investigation. The book was a creative non-fiction that told the tale of Animus's exploration of the teleportation labyrinth. With the labyrinth housing traps only related to teleportation,
Excuse me.
the actual traversal of it became rather difficult. It was from what Animus and his companions could find that they were able to narrow the traps down into 3 broad categories. The first was a one-way teleporter that sent people to the same fixed location. The second, a reciprocal teleporter that led to a magic circle allowing for teleportation back.
I love how they've done the portals, like from Portal the game, and Portal 2, but yeah.
Then the third, a random teleporter which, well, could take you anywhere. All of which had a good chance to send you straight to a pack of monsters, since the creatures inhabiting this labyrinth were both intelligent and cunning. Not only did they understand the labyrinth's complex layout, but they also knew where every teleporter would send someone, often waiting at the destination to hunt whoever it was that was using them.
Makes sense to do that.
In any case, it was after Animus had found a way to determine which teleporters were reciprocal and which were not that he would only use reciprocals to bring himself deeper. The plan itself was working rather fine, but it was a single misstep that would cause him to use a random one by accident. A fatal mistake that would cause him to lose his entire party and one of his arms. Fortunately, he survived, but with no way to defend himself in the labyrinth anymore, he decided to leave the conquering of it to the reader. Thus the reason he had written this book. The rest of the book was filled with theories about random teleportation, but there was nothing concrete other than a few hypotheses. The only one Rudy taking note of being the reason why teleportation won't ever teleport someone into the Earth itself. Sure, you can teleport someone directly into an underground cave, but because there was resistance between the mana of the person and the mana at the destination, you would never actually be able to send a person into a wall, floor, or ceiling.
Right.
It was the same principle that prevented people from casting magic right into a person's body. Perhaps there were a few exceptions to this, but the amount of magical power required to even test it was so obscene that even Rudy couldn't fathom it. Something I'm surprised the anime didn't show after was the full cafeteria scene which highlighted the hierarchy of the university.
Oh.
With the cap having 3 floors in total. The first was for adventurers and demon folk, the second for human commoners and beast folk, then the third for human royalty and nobility.
Wow. Wow.
Reason being that there would probably be some conflicts if nobility was to eat amongst the peasants.
Wow.
Rudy had no problem eating on the first floor, but for some reason Zanoba insisted they eat on the third. He refused to sit next to the heathens that didn't know even the most basic table manners. The reason Rudy didn't want to sit amongst the nobles was because his disheveled appearance made himself stick out quite clearly. Not only was he wearing the same tattered robe he'd worn his entire life, but the contrast with what the nobles were wearing was as if they were in suits and he was in sweatpants. It was a stark difference that made...
This is reminding me of, so just a quick one. My old boss got a new job at a really like swanky fine dining place, and I didn't know it was a fine dining place. And I went with one of my hats on and my bright yellow one piece hoodie, jeans, and trainers. Walked in, and the bar's right at the front, so like you got the bar area where you can sit around, and then they've got the main restaurant area. And I sat down at the bar and got myself a drink. He comes over, suit and everything, gives me a handshake, blah, blah, blah. Awkward about me giving him a hug, but he said, alright, anyway. And then as I'm sitting there drinking, I look around, absolutely everyone, I'm the only one that's just dressed like that. Absolutely everyone is in suits and dresses. And I was embarrassed. So, just couldn't believe it. Could not believe it.
Made him quite uncomfortable. Even more so when Luke appeared behind him and gave him that stern talking to. So, with Luke and his groupies making things even more awkward, Rudy had come up with the compromise to eat outside, leading to that scene with the two of them in the courtyard. This wasn't a place people would normally eat lunch, but with a little bit of earth magic, Rudy had created his own little cafe of sorts.
Oh, so he made it
giving
himself.
the two the opportunity to talk more about Luke.
Again, that's mad, that. Because I thought it was just a random little thing, but he made it himself to have his own. Oh, okay.
Ariel and Fitz. Now, if you're wondering why Xanaba of all people knows so much about them, well, that's because Linnea and Prasenna had forced him to investigate them. It wasn't a result of bullying like how you may think, but instead a simple concession of defeat after Xanaba had somehow lost them. He didn't specify what it was he lost, but for the time being that answer would suffice to delay Rudy's intervention. In any case, that would be it until Rudy's endeavor with the panties.
Jeez.
A scene that was quite accurate all the way to the end of the episode.
Oh, okay,
The
cool.
only thing I think they could have highlighted a little bit better was Rudy's confusion at the fact a boy was washing girls' underwear in the girls' dorm. A scenario he concluded was a result of Fitz being an honest, reliable bodyguard.
Right.
So, with that bringing us to the end of Rudy's first day at school, it also brings us to the end of this cut content. As always, I'm curious to know how you guys think the anime is going. Was any of the cut content really important, or do you think Mushoku Tensei is going fine the way it is? Be sure to...
I mean, it doesn't seem like too integral. It's just... it adds a little bit more context and information to the world, I guess. So I am appreciating these cut content videos after the fact. But yeah.
Let me know down in the comments and leave a like or sub if you want to after. Also, don't forget that if you want to see the cut content early, then you can come to my stream on Sundays where I talk about the most recent episode. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time.
Ciao. Yeah, I don't think it's like... it doesn't seem too important to the story. It can still progress without it, but it's like certain moments and why people are the way they are and stuff, like, it explains it a little bit more. But like I said, I think it's quite hard to put so much into an episode, but I'm really enjoying the anime, really enjoying it. And because I've been so slow on the uploads with this, I'll probably do episode 6's cut content video in a couple of days just to try and play catch up. But yeah, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is ours, but so much greatly appreciated. Thank you for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, and leave comments below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.